Hello and welcome to this video in which we will discover 12 techniques to memorize things faster. Whether we are students, employees, or entrepreneurs, we all want to learn to memorize more quickly. What probably comes to mind is the image of a student drowning in mountains of syllabuses or a freelancer drowning in tons of training he found online. Unfortunately, discouragement or even burnout are often negative long-term consequences when one becomes overwhelmed with their studies. You want to learn, and that's fine, but you have to learn better. Scattering in all directions is never the best way to memorize. Learning to learn is a discipline in its own right. You want to learn quickly and well. If you are a fan of quick, well done, then stay alert until the end of this video, because you will discover the 12 techniques that will allow you to memorize faster than average. But just before you subscribe to the channel, don't forget to download your free book to change your life by clicking on the link in the description below. 1. Put emotion into it. Charlie Chaplin said, "A good actor knows how to put emotion into action and action into emotion." Have you noticed that when a story touches you, you tend to remember details more easily? And even more so if the story touched you personally. Why? Because you are investing emotions into it. On the other hand, have you ever completely lost interest in a subject given by a bland and unemotional teacher? That's normal, it's happened to all of us. That's why your performance in a particular subject will sometimes improve after you change teachers. A speaker who is passionate about his speech is much more captivating than one who recites its lifeless content. Emotions have much more power than you think. Why not take advantage of this principle when you need to memorize information? When you put emotion into what you are reading and learning, the material will penetrate your mind more easily, as it will be linked to your feelings. Of course, it will also be easier to learn if you are passionate about the subject. But just by adding an emotional component, you can easily learn and remember the most daunting subject in your repertoire. How to connect emotions with what you are learning. It's simple. You can think about what you or your loved ones have experienced in the past. You can think about what you are experiencing in the present, or what you might experience in the future. For example, you must learn about the social consequences of the Kosovo War. One of them is that many children were orphaned, as in all wars. Imagine losing your parents. How would you feel about that? Use your empathy to put yourself in their shoes. Chances are that this information will remain engraved in your mind. You can also think about what is currently happening in the world in relation to the subject you are learning. There are different ways to do this, and it's up to you to find the one that evokes your emotions the most. 2. Highlight important words. I suppose that most of you, when you were students, hammered your course sheets with a fluorescent highlighter. Well, too much flu kills the flow. But when used in moderation, highlighting words and expressions can be effective. Take the example of blog articles. Your attention was more easily focused on underlined or bold expressions, wasn't it? The human eye is made that way. A page with uniform content and no color will be boring and tiresome for your brain. The brain is not able to effectively sort information when the sentences all look the same. However, it is very effective at spotting differences. Your eyes will tend to jump easily to a word in a bold font or in color. Make it easier for your body and for yourself. If you have to learn 200 pages, then highlight important words. When you proofread, you will no longer need to review all your sheets. You can focus only on the most important words. Normally, this will be enough to jog your memory into recalling the content of your subject. 3. Get to the point. Our memory is not infinite. A human being is not made to retain all the information. Every day, billions of pieces of information of all kinds pass before your eyes. You don't know that because you don't pay attention to it. Even though we are the most intelligent living being on planet Earth, our memory remains selective. To avoid an information overload which would drive us crazy, our brain carefully selects the information we need and forgets the rest. Nature is well made, and fortunately for us. I guess you don't remember all your math lessons once you pass the exam. Why? Because you don't use this information in everyday life, so your brain finds it useless. Similarly, you will never be able to retain all the content of a 500-page book. So you need to get to the basics in order to memorize more quickly and not clutter your brain with unnecessary information or details. It may be difficult to accept the limited nature of our memory. People who are self-taught often like to learn new subjects all the time. Some would like to know everything and know everything. This desire is even more tempting since the democratization of the internet. Knowledge is always at hand. However, wanting to know everything often leads us to becoming unfocused, which ends up making us stagnate. Because the internet is full of useless information or even false information. This is another reason to get to the point by choosing your sources. This will save you time and make it easier to remember the key information. 4. Store information in long-term memory. As I mentioned, the human brain is not made to retain all the information we come across. It is not uncommon to forget almost an entire subject once a month has passed. Why? Because unused and unsolicited information is stored in the short-term memory and disappears after a few days. To be able to retain information, you must be able to store it in long-term memory. Do not force memorization. This is very unproductive. How can information be stored in long-term memory? To retain information more easily, repeat the information several times before letting your brain rest. Allow a few hours to pass and repeat the exercise. This allows you to trick your brain. By repeating the information over and over again, your brain will think it is important and will tend to store it in your long-term memory. If you want to know more, I advise you to discover the spaced repetition method. Google is your friend. 5. Understand the information. You may have noticed that it is more difficult for you to retain information or a definition that you do not understand. And even if you could do it, what would be the point? Learning without understanding has no logic. You can never really learn a subject when you don't understand its meaning. This is why many students fail their exams. To effectively retain information, I advise you to read the entire material once in order to familiarize yourself with it and understand its main themes. During your second reading, you will have to make the effort to try to understand the information before you even think about memorizing it. For my part, I learned more about the information that took me time and research to understand. Internalize the information, understand its meaning, and learning will be easier. 6. Use the power of visualization. What is visualization? It is a natural ability, which we all have, to be able to represent more or less animated 3D images. If you have a dominant right brain, part more inclined to creativity and imagination, it will only be easier for you. Anyway, anyone can use their right brain. For example, if I ask you to visualize yourself drinking a fruit cocktail on a beach in Thailand, you will easily do so. You could even almost feel the smells, the sounds of the waves, the wind caressing your skin, the feeling of freshness of your drink, etc. Now you are visualizing. Of course, this example is a bit cliché, but you could use this method regardless of the subject you are studying. For my part, I used this method when I wanted to study history. It is easier to understand the French Revolution or the Second World War by visualizing the scene in your mind. Therefore, to retain information more easily, you must visualize it. 7. Reformulate in words. I still remember these seemingly long and endless biology and chemistry definitions, and law articles far too complicated to understand even after about 10 readings. Many thinkers or philosophers such as Marx, Freud, or Plato have left us fascinating works. The downside? They are very difficult to read and digest for novices in this field. If any information seems complicated to you, do not hesitate to rephrase it in your own words. I would read the content of the material before re-explaining it orally in my own words. This helped to make the material more accessible, understandable, and therefore more memorable. 8. Use classification. If you have trouble remembering information, feel free to categorize it. For example, if you have to study all the capitals of the world, you can classify them by continent. This will make it easier for you to study them continent by continent. This method is effective but does not necessarily work for all materials. It is up to you to decide whether this strategy would be helpful to your situation. 9. Use association. Association is a powerful tool for memorization. Why? Because we often tend to connect several elements, look for causal links, etc. For example, if you want to learn the word nail in English, you must also learn the word wall, hammer, and other words logically connected to the first. Do you see the principle? Do not hesitate to use it. Use memorization tools. There are many tools to help you memorize more quickly. You can, for example, make syntheses. If you are more visual, you can form a mind map. There are a lot of tools to help you. It's up to you to know which one suits you best. Use mnemonics. You have all heard at least once before, mais où est donc on y va, to remember the conjunctions of subordination in French. It is a famous example of a memotechnical method. You can also create your own expressions to help you memorize more quickly. Be careful, this technique does not work for everything. It is useful when you have a relatively homogeneous sequence of words, but will not work if the sentence is too complex. 12. Using a voice recorder. One of the above techniques was to read your written content out loud. In this way, information penetrates the brain more easily. If you are not visual and you are more of an oral person, why not record yourself talking? You can listen to the recording as many times as you like. This technique can be coupled with the spaced repetition technique. The human brain is a complex organ, therefore understanding how to learn more effectively will be a valuable skill. Memorizing more quickly is one of its components. There are several methods to achieve this, and it is up to you to find the ones that suit you best. This will make learning a pleasant experience rather than a constraint. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share, comment, and especially subscribe to the channel. You are also free to receive the new book, 7 Secrets to Change Your Life Now, by clicking on the link in the description below the video.